Hey everybody, welcome back. Season 3 of the Takeover. I'm not even gonna hit you with a whole bunch of pleasantries. We got another one for you. We got a banger. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, we're back again. Part 2 of the Family Ties That Bond. We're dealing with blended and bonded families, calling it mix and match. And so we're back with part 2. Last week you got part 1. It was a lot of interesting things happen. I know we want to dive right back into it, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump right back where we left off, dealing with blended families and how we need to deal with those. Previously on the takeover.
So not having parents at age 8 and you got to come and live with a whole nother family, even though they're relatives, it's a blended family because she got 6 over here and 5 of y'all, and you're all in a 3-bedroom house. And there's never, there wasn't no privacy, but there was never enough love to go around for a blended family that way. It's like you have a resentment. I had to take these 5 in. Now that makes me have all these children. And I remember I always said, I used to hurt, and I used to say, Lord, don't ever let me see no child that's not loved enough, because I'll just reach out and love them. And that goes back to that blended family of how to blend it together and not show a difference, because there was a difference. You had to fight for your life. You had to fight for your food. It was just there. And but when Dad came along, it's like he was a protector. He knew. I shared with him things that I had went through, and he knew. And all he told me was, I'm going to introduce you to my pastor. And so I talked to his pastor. His pastor got me out of my situation. In the meantime, I met his mother. And with her help, I was able to, share more things with him. And he was able to be more of a protector to me and Sheila.
1 week later.
Specifically, what type of role did she play? What type of role did grandma play?
Oh, my mother-in-law she was so full of love until you couldn't help but love her. She make you melt almost. She took Sheila. Sheila was not even 2 years old, and she was letting her call her grandma. Mind you, we wouldn't think about getting married, none of that, but she would let her call her grandma from day one. And she took Sheila like she was her own grandchild. I took Sheila to the doctor one time, and the doctor said she can't have anything to eat because she had a flu. She said all she could have is some juice. And I remember Mom calling me and heard her crying, and she said, "What's wrong with my baby?" And I said, "Well, the doctor said thus and thus." And she said, "I'm coming to get her." I said, "Okay." Okay. And so and from that day on, she was just there. She mentored me because I was young, and she told me what to expect. She told me how to live. She taught me how to be a wife. She took me to buy my first furniture for my own apartment. I mean, she was like a chauffeur, but she was like my mom, the mother I never had after 8 years old. And that's the way she was. She stepped in those shoes and filled them. And it made me feel complete. And people would tell me later on down the line, I remember the pastor saying, she's an angel in disguise. And I said, I believe that because of the way she cared. She never had a mean word about me. She never held it against me that I had a child out of wedlock. she loved me so that when
Here it comes, ladies and
when,
gentlemen.
when we announced we were getting married, she made your granddaddy pay for everything. You know, because that's just the way she was. She never let it be shown, and she never let the difference be shown between none of her grandchildren. None of them. You know, you just couldn't do it. You know, so I really I miss her a lot. I think about the things she taught me, and the things I go through now, I can relate to what she taught me. So I knew, okay, she taught me that for now. You know, back then I might not have understood it, but now I do. And so I took on like the mantle she had for love. She never would like to see children, you know, they be frigid in church. She'd always keep crackers or something in her purse. She said, all that's wrong with them is they want something to snack on. And she'd take them out and give them a cracker or whatever and bring them back. That was her. And that's the way I am. I love children. You know, and I don't never want to see a difference because that's not a good feeling. To be in a household and don't feel no love, it's not good at all.
Amen. But I do want to ask y'all, and we'll start with Sheila. None of this seems very easy. It all, you know, first of all, what keeps you going or what kept you going in this? And then as a child in a blended family, what's your advice to a child that may be going through what you went through?
I would have to say what kept me going, first and foremost, was God, my relationship with him. I had a strong support system with my husband because he knew of everything too. The best that I could say is talk it out. Anything that, you know, may be bothering you, concerning you, pray about it. Anything that you can do to find peace, do it, because holding on to a lot of it is not going to do you any good either. It's not going to do you. Like I stated earlier, having siblings that I know nothing about. Well, two, a cousin and a brother I know of, but that's about it. I know it's more, but the best advice I can give you is if you have a good relationship with the Lord, give it to him, and you have a strong backing with your family too. That's always good also.
What about you, George Jr.?
Wow. Honestly, I'm blown away just listening and going through it. As a child, going through it, even to the point of when I found out, I never considered it or felt like I was living through a blended family. Honestly, it was more, and even to this day, it's my family, but it's termed, as you say now, and knowingly, it is that. I'm just, I just say blown away is the best term I can use to parents that protected us, kept us, let us be, I don't know, not feeling blended, knowing our family never be treated different by anyone. You know, it wasn't allowed. And I'm sure with people that would have happily wanted to exploit it or talk about it, but you know, it was never come up in, you know, it's a talk around the town where it could come up in a conversation or even stanging, as they say, that went into, you know, as childhood and kids going through. So just sitting here, you know, listening to the things, and you know, we talk about Pops and how he you know, was going his Mac road and all, but you have even today, you know, which this is more of happening today, obviously, in this time in the 21st century, but what he did and stepped up, but even before he had mom, and that showing that from a, you know, 18-year-old man, and where he'd had grown to that point, and it goes even back to his raising, obviously, But for him to be that brought us to this point today, it gets me, man. And I talked about mom with the tissue, and I had to, watch myself, just because it makes you just rewind a lot. But we're blessed, and it all started with God. Everything you hear us say, how God structured us and kept us here at the church had its effect on us. And even today, we know without that foundation of God that we all had, we wouldn't be here at this point having this conversation.
I'm gonna circle back to you by yourself, George, about your other situation with the older stepkids, because I want to get into that by yourself. But Mom, Dad, give me one piece of advice for parents dealing with that situation. What's your piece of advice?
Set goals as a family. And when you set those goals, include God, but be relentless and determined with your life. I target us being a family with my life. And if my life went on the line, so be it. There are some stories I can tell you where my life was on the line. But it didn't seem life-threatening at that time because of the love that I had for my wife to be and everything that entailed. And it's like, if it costs my life, so be it, because I'm gonna go for this. And I will say this though, my late pastor told me that if I wanted to be successful, there couldn't be a difference between my love for Sheila than my love for my children to come. He said, if you do that, you'll be successful. He said, if you don't, he said, because she might have to take care of you. And that's the way he put it. He's sitting in the chair like this, talking to me. He's like, because of some struggles. Y'all are in the day of when the fruition has came forth, but there was cultivating that going. It wasn't there were some roots that had to be dug up. I had to overcome some things, just like I did between you and George, learning that you were different from George, because that's not where I grew up at. I grew up, we all one family about, and you just handle your family. And y'all, my children, y'all do what I say, that's it. But later on, I learned it's not like that. So persevere. Give it all you got. Give your life for it. Give your life for it. And that's what I did. And y'all are my fruit. That's why every time I look at y'all, I can rejoice. I know I was a good father. You know how I know I was a good father? Because the way George handled his sons, the way Sheila handles her children, the way Marcellus ministers at Kingdom and with the young people and with the coaching, all that. I see me. I see me extended. I see your mama extended. That's why I know we are successful. I know I was a great dad by the fruit, but it's all by the grace of God. Grace of God kept this all together until he took imperfect vessels and created his desire and his will.
And I know y'all on one accord. So I know you just gonna second that. I want to thank everybody. We got a little time left. I just want to thank y'all for coming out, sharing, being open and honest with everybody. Appreciate it. People are going to be blessed because of this, and that's really what this is all about. We want to give people some real life stuff that they can hold on to and be blessed by. So I know we did that tonight. So y'all take it easy. Boog, I'll get with you in a second.
Love you. All of you.
All right, love y'all.
We're back with Junior. Y'all know him. He's 2-week guest here. Fool around to be a 3-week guest. is the way we're going. But look, man, we've been talking about blended families, and I know, you know what, when I asked everybody what advice was, you know what my advice is, and I'm sure I'll repeat this at the end of the show, but my advice is to forget all the labels. Forget the label blended, forget the label mixed, forget the label half, forget the label step. You know, when it's all said and done, just be family, you know, and that's, I think that's what got us past a lot of the stuff that can get in the way, especially hearing about mom's experience. And I guess I knew in my mind, her mom passed when she was young. Her dad was not in the picture. And so I knew she was in a blended family, but I just never really thought about it that way.
Right.
I never took the time to think about it. And her bad experience, and then, you know, I guess her and dad figured out how not to make that the experience for us. And so we definitely appreciate them for that. But I wanted to talk to you separately because you have your own experiences. You know, you had an opportunity to meet and take in, if you will, some older children in a relationship that weren't as young as Sheila was when she came into Dad's life. How's the dynamic different of blending older children into a family who might not like the idea of mom or dad being with somebody else, or, you know, maybe they don't care, maybe they do, whatever. How's the dynamic different though?
Yeah, it's very different, man. It obviously it was something I could never imagine, and not even looking at us ourselves as in a blended family in our time, it was a dynamic that was challenging and rewarding. I would say that when you're dealing with teenagers, you know, at the time, it's kind of a thing you have to look at. Even yourself when you were a teenager, you thought you knew a lot, you thought you knew it all, you thought, you know, what are you gonna come in and tell me? And not only that, you're dealing with children who love their mom dearly, and you coming in to be a part of their lives. And it's a dynamic that was even bigger because I'm bringing you know, 8 and 5-year-old with me to that component. So you're talking about impressionable.
Here's the story of a man named Boogie.
Man. So, you know, and the age differences were 10 years in between, you know. So you're talking about 18 and 15 and 8 and 5 on my side. So you're looking at, for me, children that know some things in life. You're a teenager, you know something, and you're coming in to be with their mom. They're going to be very protective, which they were, and you have to earn trust on their end, not on just for them, but on your mate. You know, I'm looking at, hey, yes, I'm here, I love your mom and all, but she's going to entrust me with her children, which one was being a daughter, which I had no experience of having a daughter. And, you know, and been wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I'm so thankful because it changes you as a father when you do have a daughter. But I didn't have that experience until then. So when it came about, it was really a continual learning process. You know, looking back, I wish I would have had more of the conversations to kind of define the lines? Yes, just to know what is expected, what is quote unquote allowed, what do they believe you should be, you know, for their children, so that your mate will understand that. And I think that's something people really should do, not to have any misunderstandings. And I was blessed to not really have that because of just the nature of who I am. I'm kind of going to test the waters. I'm going to fill it out and go as you allow me to, because it is a point you have to feel like you allow until you build that relationship with them, especially older. So when that fact of me building that relationship with them, I didn't have to ask any questions because they ended up coming to me. It was almost like I'm looking for that direction. Now I trust you. Now you know, have entered my world and become a part of it. Now you're dad. So, and the dynamic of mine was different because they had fathers that weren't really there in their lives. So the opportunity of wanting that, because any child, and I'll tell anybody that any child I know of wants some type of direction and discipline. They want to be able to feel like they can learn and not have to go through it all. Even though we feel like we know so much at a certain point, it's still things that they have to learn and go through. So in that dynamic for me, it was a continual growing process even until this day. And I become, you know, learning it. You want to talk about learning on the job. That was truly learning on the job, being a young man, to be in that, to have that blend and not only intertwining there and trusting how you help to raise or continue to raise and let their children learn more from you, but you have to deal with obviously their mom in the aspect. And like I said before, having young children of my own that even blend with them as their big brother and big sister.
Yeah, man, that's it's deep. You mentioned having those conversations beforehand with with your potential spouse or your significant other at the time. I can imagine those conversations, particularly when it comes to discipline, um, can be difficult, but very necessary, because it would seem that the discipline aspect, and this is especially the case, I believe, if the parents grew up in two different environments, and then they're trying to bring their environments into this one environment where there's already kids on both sides, and they have maybe two different mindsets on discipline. I imagine that how did you handle that particular subject?
That was key, honestly. And that's a great point you bring up because of the raising, and it was not as prevalent on my side as far as my discipline to her children because they were older. You know, it wasn't a thing of younger kids, even though discipline and those components come up, and you kind of see how that parent chooses the discipline, and you learn what growing up or what have transpired in their growing and raising. And you discuss the different ways that you look at it and different ways that you handle things. Some may be the hollower, the screamer, the whooper, whatever you want to call those. And then you have a person that was not the component I brought. I was always that I can bring you the knowledge. I can be mad at you or, you know, upset, disappointed at you, and my tone is still this tone, whether I'm happy for you, upset, or whatever. And I can still install and instill knowledge into you and bring a different aspect that you may not be getting. So it's a lot of times it becomes that co-parenting part where, you know, the other parent may give them the rah, 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 and you coming in like to see that did the child really get it? Like, did you really get the point of it all? Their delivery might not have been the thing that got you because it's what you heard and you got used to, but you hear a different voice bringing the same message in a different way, and it eventually helped the children in it, and they ended up appreciating it. And you know, our relationship grew from that, knowing that you could never be their parent that, you know, has been there forever, but the growth of that point that you came in and changed their life and affected it, they will love you the same.
Yeah, I know. Even for me, being on the outside looking in, for them, her children, to call me Uncle Cellus or Uncle Marcellus, just like your boys would call me Uncle Cellus or Uncle Marcellus. It was an interesting dynamic for me because I'm not sure I expected it. I was just like, I didn't know what to expect. I don't think so.
Right.
You know, it was but it was good. It was real positive for me to have that happen. And I know one thing I just thought about that maybe I didn't quite give enough thought to is just the different norms and the different mores and the different, because each family is its own little society and each family has a family culture. And so when you grow up, like you said, 18, 15 years of raising children with a certain culture, and then you come into a different culture and you blend these cultures, there's obviously going to be some differences in those norms. And I don't, and I don't want to, I'm certainly not going to badmouth anybody as an adult. I'm not going to do that, especially with them not here to defend themselves at all. But I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm saying you could have done a better job of understanding the differences in those norms and being able to kind of adjust to just the fact that it's different, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you saw it the same way or not. I think sometimes we just get so hard and fast with what we do and what we think we need to do that we don't leave room for that adjustment.
Yeah.
And I guess that is what, just from what I'm thinking about. But I know just from watching you, and I know how much they care about you, and I know how much they love you, and I know how much you mean to them as a I don't know, as a father figure. I don't know what they, you tell me. You tell me, how do they see you?
I'm dad. And that stood the test of time with me because, like you said, coming into that point in life, you don't usually, you think about it, God blessed us to have parents that were together and, to the end and still together. But I think about it myself. If I was ever in that situation, dude wouldn't have been getting none of that. It wouldn't have mattered. There's no way we would have been feeling him. Dad, he could have been the greatest dude in the world. But I'm at, teenage years. I know I've been around. I know enough to know my dad, whatever. I'm going in and being that because my daughter, her dad is still alive, still in her life. It's no thing that he's not there, but he wasn't as active, and it's amazing that became more active later on, even after I came into the picture. To me, it was never a threat, but it was a wonderful thing. But it was really touching when it's like to the point it went from Mr. George to dad, and it just stayed dad. And no matter what up and downs in the family, whatever transpired, it was still dad. And I need to talk to you and get, even when their friends come, hey, this is dad. This is my dad. It was not, hey, this is my stepdad. And of course, people that knew their father or whatever, knew their father would be like, they kind of figured it out because they were older. And it wasn't it wasn't even needed to be said just because of the way the world is now. But that component, I never took it for granted because it didn't have to be, and it was just a blessing because I knew God had to help me through that to learn, because I didn't have an example to go and say, hey, teach me how to do this, this, and that, because I never considered our family blended. We look at it now. I actually had a father that had to deal with some of these things and having a daughter, even though she was younger, but I never thought of our family as blended to even go to him for advice on that. Never even had that conversation. And, that had been something that could have helped me on some aspects because he'd done it, 30, 40 years before that. So it did become that. It was dad. And it wasn't, like I said, it started that. You're Mr. George. You had to earn that. You had to earn it. And it wasn't a thing. It was one of those things that touch your heart so much because you know that you are affecting and touching someone's life enough to where they put your trust in you and giving you, because you had to be given that title. It wasn't one that you birthed into them that came with it from the birth certificate. They had to give that to you, so you had to earn it.
Yeah, that's real, man. And I'm gonna ask you, in closing, about this because I wanted to address this because it's a little different with older children, obviously. But I'm asking just like I asked, Mom, what's your advice? Or what is your piece of wisdom? I know you've already given some nuggets, but what's your piece of wisdom for somebody who may be marrying into that, coming up with their own Miller Bunch / Brady Bunch story?
Right.
But what is that? What's the key? What are the key or keys to making that successful? Just that transition, because the marriage is going to be what the marriage is. But what's the key to making the family unit come together with unity?
Yeah, and you say, like I said, marriage is going to be marriage, but even in that marriage, it's so essential, the family component of it, because any woman that loves her children and letting a man around them, much as she loves him, she has to trust him also around her children, especially in the dynamic of having a teenage young girl. And I took that to heart because just of the temperature and how the nature of this United States and our world is even now. So anybody that is going there, I tell you first to build a relationship with the children. When you have older children, build that relationship, let them know that you're not just about their mom, because you can't just be about them. And because none of those children ever want to feel like you're taking her away from them and going to isolate them because you're just about her. You have to be about those children also, because they are extensions of her. They are flesh of her flesh. And now if you're going to be a part of her life, they are going to be yours too. And I can never, like you said, I don't say it any different. It's not the step kids, because you have to get in and earn that with them. Not saying that everybody's dynamic will come out. I think it's so many different scenarios and so many ways it could come out, but you have to start there. You have to go, and the children, especially older children, they have to trust what you're saying to them, and it can't just be talk. You have to show them. They have to see that you're not just there to get their mom, because any child is going to think, okay, my mom is pretty, guys always want her, but what is going to happen to us? So take that, because if you don't, and I'll tell anybody that if your relationship are scarred with her children, it will affect your marriage. It is no way around that, because of her and her love for them. It will affect your marriage. And that's not necessarily saying you have done something wrong. And it puts your spouse in the basket. You don't want to put, not only because of your love for your spouse, her and her children, you don't want to put her in the middle of anything between you and the children, because she doesn't need to be there to make that choice. And it being on the husband side and the man, for me, it was, I am the protector. I am supposed to be the protector. And when I'm taking on this responsibility of her, I've taken on responsibility of those children also. So you have to look at it. And I'll tell anybody, and especially I can speak to a man that's going into a situation, because that is my exact experience. If you're going into that situation, you better sit down and learn the children, talk to them, and open up to them. If they're older, you have to learn where their maturity level, where their thought process is, how much they let you in. And you can't just be in the beginning, I'm gonna do this until I've got your mom, I've done enough to, because they're watching. They're gonna see, like, is he gonna do this until mom says yes to him and they get married, and then it's gonna go away? You better remain there consistent, and because they're gonna see it and they'll thank you for it later in life. And I've had, there's a thing that they come back to you and just like, thank you for being you. And it's no feeling like it, I can say it. No feeling like it.
Man, that's good. That's good, bro. You correct me if I'm wrong, but when you was talking, I got the picture in my head that you can't go in walking on eggshells, but you can't go in like a bull in a china shop either. You got to go in there and you got to figure out the direction of travel by talking and communicating with the mother and with the children. I think some people miss the "and" with the children. They try to communicate solely through the mother, or they try to go through the children to use the children to get to the mother and things like that, instead of just, it has to be an and there. So, man, that's good, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate you sharing that. I know, not everybody wants to dig into their personal lives, but I really firmly believe with this show, we want to talk about some things that the church is not necessarily talking about, but also just the things that people are going through in the church that we need to give them something to know, give them something to look at, give them something to learn from it. And if we don't talk about it, what are they going to do? They're going to go out in the world and talk about it, and it may be perverted or whatever else. So
Yeah.
why not us? Why not
Yeah.
talk about it?
Yeah, I agree. And it's like you said, it's situations like it now, but it's not discussed. We get used to putting on a facade and make it seem like everything goes so well, but you see it when you look at it. You'll see some blended families, and the father be there, even sitting in the church, and they all at church together, and they kids have nothing to do with him, don't want anything to do with him, don't even want to listen to him. But like you said in that example, you can't go in on eggshells because of, especially if you're rooted and founded within God and the Word, you know what you're going to encompass and what you're getting yourself into as far as family. You can't separate anything there. And you want to talk about blending something totally, two different worlds and different. You have children being raised different, been on different sides of the world, not knowing people until saying, hey, this is who it is, and this becomes your family. So you, like you say, I look at it like we fishing. We might try to fish this straight line thinking this is the way to go, but sometimes you have to weave left, weave right. And all the time, sometimes you go fish on the other side of the boat because you're like, hey, this is where I need to be now. Everybody might not get on. Then all of a sudden we all fishing there together. So you have those conversations with your wife, you have conversations with your kids, and sometimes you have to have them all together. And it's a thing that you have to decide and choose those times, and you can't be fearful. If you're walking you're walking with God, first of all, and He leading you, and you're trusting and believing, and you're praying on these things, and asking God to help you. You have to trust in where He leads you, how He leads you, and what He brings out of your mouth to speak, and knowing that when it's on that foundation of His Word, you can't go wrong.
For sure. All right, bro. Big Brown took enough of your time, man. I appreciate you again. Man, this is gonna be great for people when this comes out. I can't wait to see the response that people get from just talking about some stuff they're not used to hearing. So thanks, man. And of course, man, we'll catch up again. Love you. Take care.
All right, love you too, bro, and thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I told you this was a different season. I told you things were going to be different, but I want to just kind of close it. I told you we won't ever just talk about issues. We want to also provide solutions. And I know my father, my brothers, my sister, and my mom, they all provided some nuggets all in there of what we need to do. But I was just kind of want to close it up. The first thing I want to talk about is we're unique. Remember I told y'all we were wonderfully complex in last week's episode. And we are all individual units, and it's important to understand what that means, right? So let's look at what units are from a kingdom perspective. Kingdom units are uniquely nurtured, individualized, transforming subjects. Uniquely nurtured, individualized, transforming subjects. Kingdom units are the precise, particular elements designed to be the whole, complete and competent for combining with others to create a team synergy and unity, to support the expansion and advancement of the kingdom of God, and for experiencing the enjoyment of a kingdom lifestyle. So as individuals, we're the particular elements that are designed to be the whole and complete and competent to get to unity. Oh man, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but you got to get that right there. 3 laws of kingdom units are parts or slices, if you will, pieces or servings, particulars or specifics, okay? So we're these units, right? We're the units, and we're parts and pieces and particulars, individual in and of ourselves. but our destiny is unity. That's what these units are designed for, not to stay units, but to come together in unity. And that's what you have to do with blended families, is have every individual unique person come together in unity. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at unity. Kingdom unity is realizing that under one name, all instruction and training yields success. Under one name, and that's your family name and your heavenly family's name. Okay? Name of God. Kingdom unity is the recognition and acceptance of the one system that correctly sponsors and supports the expansion and advancement of the kingdom of God, and for experiencing the enjoyment of a kingdom lifestyle. Okay? So when all these units, individual, come together, it's all accepting that one system. It's just like my dad said, nobody feeling different, nobody feeling unloved, nobody feeling loved differently. One system that correctly supports and sponsors the expansion and advancement of the kingdom of God, because that is the key. You heard my sister say, you heard the rest of my family say that God was the key to her dealing with that. And to even those feelings she developed as she got older, God was the key to her dealing with that. 3 laws of kingdom unity. And you're going to like this: mixing or synthesizing, merging, harmonizing, or making one, unifying. And that's what we got to do. We mix. Remember I told you we call this mix and match. So we mix and we merge and we make one. And that's what we're doing with these families. That's what my family was saying when it's all said and done. That's what we got to do. Now let's talk about what the word says about unity. You're going to like this. Ephesians 4:2-3 says, always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. The King James Version says, unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. Same thing. Be humble and gentle. Be patient. Be patient. We have to be patient in these situations, in these families, because it takes some time. It takes some time to learn. We talked about, George and I, when we sat down together, we talked about blending cultures together, family cultures. It takes some time. And there's going to be some faults. We got to make allowances for each other's fault because of the fact that we love each other. And that's what we got to remember. It boils back down to love for each other. Mark 3:24-25 says this: a kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. And then verse 25 says, similarly, a family splintered by feuding will fall apart. Now, we talked about Kirk Franklin and his situation last week. This scripture says it all with regards to that. A family splintered by feuding will fall apart. And so that's why it's so important to keep peace inside that family and to anchor it in love so that there's no feuding and thus a splintering of the family. Now, there's no one way to do that. I'm not an expert. I'm not even a parent. I am in a blended family. I am a part of that. But there's no one way. I know there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's going to be a lot of, but I can tell you that principally it comes down to that unity, to those units becoming united in unity and thus becoming that one faith camp of a family. And so I was thinking about this, and I believe the Spirit dropped this in my mind. I was thinking about how families come together and what that was likened unto. And y'all know I'm kind of a nerd, or maybe more than kind of. But I thought about my science days in school, and we talked about bonding. Because I told y'all we're talking about the family ties that bond. So we talked about bonding in science class, and there were 2 main types of bonds. There's covalent bonds and there's ionic bonds. Now there's also metallic bonds, but it's not one of the 2 main bonds. So we're going to just focus on covalent versus ionic bonds. Now, these are the two main chemical bonds when you bond chemicals together. So um, here's the key difference, though. And this is what I want you to see. So get this. One of the key difference is in an ionic bond, one atom essentially donates an electron to another atom, and that's how they bond, right? Um, so let's say salt, for example, that is sodium chloride, right? Well, when salt comes together, um, the sodium donates an electron to the chloride. So what happens is electrons, and I know I'm getting too far off, but I promise I'm coming back. Electrons hold a negative charge, right? So if sodium gives up a negative, so it now becomes positive, and I give off a negative to the chloride, it becomes a negative. So now I got positive sodium, negative chloride, and they have a polar bond. I talked about this a few months ago in a message about magnetism, how opposites attract, plus and minus attracts in magnetism, right? So this is very similar, and that's why it's called polar. You got a north pole and a south pole, and so that's why it's called that. Now, that happens generally between a metal and a non-metal in chemistry, okay? Covalent bonds, however, form between two non-metals, so two similar or the same things. So let's say you got two hydrogen atoms. That they would form a covalent bond. Now the difference is, instead of one hydrogen giving up an electron and then they're donating one to the other, they share the two, right? So they come together and they share those electrons in that bond. So they're still positive and they share the bond of those electrons, and that is a stronger bond than the ionic one. Now, both of them are bonds, but the covalent bond of them sharing those electrons is the stronger one. Now, in the ionic bonds, that donating of electron, it stabilizes both of those atoms, okay? So it needs that electron in order to become fully stable, right? In a true covalent bond, both of the atoms have the same electronegativity. So like I told you, they're both the same. So that's why it happens between identical atoms. So what happens is the electrical charge is evenly distributed throughout the two atoms, and thus the bond is non-polar. It's not dependent on the plus and minus charge to bond it to each other because they're sharing that same charge. Now, you might be saying, man, what does that have to do with this? Oh, but see, I saw it. See, when blended families first come together, it's like two different things. It's like a metal and a non-metal, right? And the initial bonds are more ionic than anything. It's like you give a little here and you take a little there, and you kind of find some common bond, if you will, that you can, well, I'm going to give you a little bit of this because you were missing that in your life. And you're going to give me a little bit of that because maybe I was missing that in my life. And so we're bonded. But we both still got different charges. We're two different things. But as time goes on and we continue to develop those bonds, we become the same. When my father adopted my sister, she became a Miller, and we became the same.
Message!
And so now those Millers share a common electrical charge, and we share our bonds together, and they tight. They're the stronger bonds. And when you develop those bonds to be those covalent, stronger ones, and you don't play the games, between, one family and the other family, and we gonna battle back and forth. And but when you just develop those bonds and they become those super strong covalent bonds, that's when the family becomes its stronger. That's when the family reaches its strongest point. And I know that might take a while to sink in. You might have to watch that again or just Google it if you don't understand what I'm saying. And I think you'll be able to see the picture. But that's how the Spirit speaks to me sometimes in showing a picture that, maybe some people can understand. But if I had to leave us with some advice or some words of wisdom, I would say this. And I'm going to talk to the children in these situations because obviously that's what I was in the situation. Forget the labels as definers of who you are to each other, okay? I'm talking about the step, the half, the once removed, and all that jazz. They're to me, they're there for people to understand the relationship outside of that family. But inside of the family, we're just family. That's all we are, just family. I told you, I didn't even know my sister was a half sister until middle school. And who cares? I never called her half sister after that. I'm only saying that again so somebody outside the family can understand. But that's just my sister. That's my big sister. Period. Don't compete for attention amongst each other, amongst the children. That is going to be hard enough for the parents to deal with and trying to figure out how to balance that attention. I wrote a story many years ago when I was dealing with feeling the need for attention and feeling like I wasn't getting it enough. And it wasn't just my family, my immediate family, it was my extended family. And that story is, I'm going to release it at some point, I believe, as a children's book because I think it'll help children the most. I just got to rewrite it in children's format. But it was called Big Brother, Little Me. And it was about my struggle to live up to the expectations that my big brother had set because he was such a great athlete and I was just kind of not at the time. So while I was excelling in the classroom and doing things like that and band and stuff like that, it just didn't seem to garner the same excitement or attention as what he did on the basketball court. So the good thing about us and the thing that kept us from a sibling rivalry in that is because he never treated me like that. He always supported me. He always would say little things like, man, if I was just if I was as smart as you or stuff like that, man, that he knew that would make me feel good and make me feel like that I was just as important as him. And because he did that, and he did that so much and so well, we never ended up in that sibling rivalry at all. And that's so important. So don't compete for attention and if just help each other with that. If you see somebody, you see your brother or your sister struggling, just lift them up. Deal with any anger. Deal with it. Don't harbor it. Because if you keep it in, we talked about anger on this program before. If you keep it in, it's like that aerosol can that's under pressure, contents under pressure, and it will burst once it gets heated up high enough. So deal with that anger. Find that release valve, like the top of that aerosol can, and let that anger out. Because if you don't, it will consume you. If it bursts, it will burst into flames and burn you up. And then finally, love is the ultimate weapon. Love is the ultimate weapon. Now, that includes honesty and tough love, right? Sometimes love hurts. That statement is true. Love hurts because love can be, the truth hurts sometimes. And when you have to tell somebody the truth, despite of how they feel, sometimes that can hurt them. But it's important to love and let that be the basis for that bond. Oh, man. Well, that's really what I wanted to get to y'all, and I hope this helps somebody. I really do. I really hope that helps somebody. But pray for us. I told y'all we're doing some topics, and next week will be no different. It'll be another sensitive topic. So pray for us, and to keep us in your prayers and lift us up. But like this video, smash that thumbs up, hit that share button, and then certainly subscribe. And click the notification bell so you know when the videos are coming up. And again, if you want to reach out to us, you can leave a comment on this video or email at khmsocialmedia@gmail.com. Now, coming up next week, we're going to be dealing with part 3 of the family ties, that bond. And that third part and the final part in this, I believe is the final part in this series, is dealing with death in the family. Death in the family. And we all have been there. And that's a difficult one, but we need to talk about it. We need to talk about how death can sometimes splinter a family if it's not dealt with correctly. I'm going to leave you with these final words. Again, Ephesians 4:13 through 16. This will continue until we all come to such unity in our faith and knowledge of God's Son that we will be mature in the Lord, measuring up to the full and complete standard of Christ. Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every new wind of new teaching. We will not be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever they sound like the truth. Remember, I told y'all, we learn about how to act in the body of God. This will tell us how to act in the family. We can't be tricked by outside people trying to sow discord amongst us. Instead, verse 15 says, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. I can't say it any better than that. So until we meet again, God bless you. Be safe. Love you. Take care.